Hello and welcome back to another edition of GNAT-TV's In-Depth Series. I'm Andrew McClure, the news director at GNAT-TV's News Project, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today on Monday, February 22nd. It's also a great pleasure today to be joined by Carolyn Weir, who is the executive director of the J. Warren and Lois McClure Foundation, and she is also the senior philanthropic advisor to the Vermont Community Foundation. Carolyn, great to have you with us today. Thank you very much for making the time for this conversation.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be here.
Well, I first heard of you folks and your organization when I was on a call with the Vermont Chamber of Commerce. They had one of their top economists, Matt Barowitz, who's been a guest on my program before, talking about the Vermont labor market. And they mentioned the McClure Foundation, the great work that you folks have done in terms of helping younger Vermonters kind of find a job or career path forward from high school or whenever it is they're entering the workforce. So that's such an interesting topic. I wanted to explore it further with you today. And before we get into that, though, I guess tell us a little bit about the McClure Foundation. When did you get founded, and what is your main mission?
Well, thank you for asking, and I'm so glad that you saw Matt Barowitz's presentation at the Chamber of Commerce. You know, all states have a labor market, economic labor market and information director, and I think Vermont is lucky to have Matt. He has been a strong partner to the McClure Foundation in our effort to help promote information about Vermont's most promising jobs and how to get them. So the McClure Foundation is a statewide foundation that focuses on making the education and training pathways to Vermont's most promising jobs more visible, more accessible, and more affordable. We believe that college and career training is essentially the closest thing to a silver bullet that we have in advancing economic mobility and promoting equity and resilience in Vermont communities and economies. We were founded a little over 25 years ago as an affiliate of the Vermont Community Foundation by our founders, Mac and Lois McClure. They're longtime philanthropists who cared very deeply about Vermont, Vermont families, Vermont communities, and they wanted to further structure their giving. So 25 years later, we continue to be guided in our giving and our work by their daughter, Barbara, our president, and by our partnership with the Vermont Community Foundation and its commitment to closing opportunity gaps in Vermont.
All right. Well, so what are you seeing then as some of the most promising jobs and career opportunities for, well, we'll start with younger Vermonters, but I also thought it'd be interesting to talk about folks who maybe are in midlife, looking to maybe change career paths. You published a very interesting document I was looking at earlier, outlining some of these career opportunities that are available for younger Vermonters. I guess walk us through that if you wouldn't mind, and tell us what some of those findings were.
Well, I already mentioned our partnership with Matt, and this document is that partnership in action. It's essentially a simple but very hopeful list of Vermont's high pay, high demand jobs. We update it every 2 years in partnership with Matt and his team at the Vermont Department of Labor. And we updated this list last fall. Now, the new list, I think, reflects the enormous diversity of jobs available to Vermonters now and in the future. The list projects job openings over the next 10 years. And with so many Vermonters out of work or maybe thinking about changing career fields because of the pandemic, I think it's probably never been more important to be able to access good and reliable information about promising jobs and how to get them. Now, the jobs themselves, as you can imagine, really kind of span the gamut. They range from telecommunications installers to licensed practical nurses to electricians to computer support specialists to accountants, real estate brokers, HR specialists, really, you name it. Each of the 60 plus occupations on this list is expected to pay at least $22 an hour, median wage, and have at least 220 openings over the next decade. There are some sectors that are particularly well represented, and they probably won't be a surprise to you, Andrew, or to your listeners. Sectors like healthcare, construction and the trades, manufacturing, and some business-to-business services like IT, marketing, accounting, and finance. So when we take a step back and we look at this long list of promising jobs, what's clear to us is that whether someone's looking for work or wanting to change jobs, whether someone's a current student or looking just to gain new skills, our hope is that there really is something out there for everyone.
Has the pandemic impacted any of this at all? I mean, it must have had some kind of an impact on how the job market is faring today, and possibly what it might be like in the future. I mean, here in Vermont, for instance, the hospitality industry has often been cited as one that has really been hurt pretty badly by it. And as I've been reading about all this, about what kinds of jobs, will be plentiful or promising as we hopefully emerge out of the pandemic, and sometime over the course of this coming year. I mean, does that imply that jobs like in restaurants and hotels, are they going to be perhaps not as plentiful as they were in the past, or what does your research show about that?
It's a great question. I think, the answer is that there's no question the pandemic and the COVID-19 virus has had a big impact on Vermont's workforce and continues to have a big impact, right? There are new health and safety requirements in the workplace. There are new skills required for remote work. There's higher than usual levels of unemployment because of family and health considerations, like not having childcare or not being in a position to be exposed to the virus in a workplace. And for many, I think especially in the hospitality and food sectors, the work they were doing is gone. The latest data that I've seen from the State Department of Labor shows that 40% of jobs in accommodation and food service are still gone. So we also know that women's jobs are being disproportionately impacted by COVID. So there are a lot of folks who are out of work and potentially looking for work now, or will be looking for work in the future. And for others, this pause, this disruption to our day-to-day lives might just have us thinking differently about new career paths. So there are a couple of things on our mind in response to that. I think the first is that many of the promising jobs on our list are actually really essential in the state's response to the coronavirus. The more Vermonters who enter into these career fields, like nursing, for example, and even IT support, the more prepared Vermont will be to take on current and future challenges. So there's a resilience component to workforce that I think is on our minds right now. The next is that, for many Vermonters who are out of work or are looking for work or looking to change new fields, many of them aren't going to want to sign up or aren't going to be in a position to sign up for a 2 or 4 year degree or skills training program, right? And what's clear is that many of the promising jobs on our list can be obtained with short-term career training programs. But I think that it can be overwhelming to navigate the hundreds of training programs available across the state. I know it would be for me. So that's part of the reason why the McClure Foundation, as a part of releasing this updated list, also for the very first time, did some research, coordinated with a lot of workforce development stakeholders and leaders from across the state, and selected 7 short-term career training programs that we consider best bets for landing a promising job in 2021 in Vermont as a way to help job seekers looking to gain new skills find the right fit for them. So all of those 7 programs are listed on our website. They're each offered by either the Community College of Vermont, CCV, or Vermont Technical College. They all can be finished within 18 months, and they represent some critical program fields like finance, information technology, manufacturing, marketing, computer programming, and software. When we looked at the range of short-term career training programs across the state, these 7 stood out to us because they're affordable, they are short, they're easily accessible no matter where you live in Vermont. Most of them are online. And they're all offered by colleges that have a really strong track record of supporting and serving Vermonters from all backgrounds. I can share just a couple examples of those best bet programs with you now, because I think it's a helpful way to conceptualize how these training programs can offer a new career path for someone. The first that comes to mind is the bookkeeping certificate at CCV, which is technically an apprenticeship program. Folks can complete that program in as little as 1 year, and it leads directly to a promising job as a bookkeeper, either at a company or even working for yourself. And bookkeepers who complete the program can apply those credits and the cost of that program towards an accounting degree down the road and become a CPA while they're earning income as a bookkeeper. So it's a program that's part of a very clearly articulated career pathway that starts with a promising job but leads to even higher wages down the road.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because I'm assuming, well, I guess probably throughout history, there's always been people who got to be 35 or 40 and decided, I didn't really want to be a lawyer, I want to be a school teacher. But how do I make that transition? Or maybe it's the other way around, I don't know. But, there are programs out there for folks who, particularly with the pandemic going on, say, hey, it looks like this pathway here that I thought was going to be great, is less certain than it was, but there is this program that I can get a certification for and transition into a different field.
Right. And I think philanthropy, from what I have seen and am involved with, is really trying to shine a spotlight on some of these high quality short-term career training programs and make them even more affordable for Vermonters this year. So the Vermont Community Foundation has a Vermont COVID-19 Response Fund. I think your listeners may be familiar with it. It's supported a wide range of community organizations across the state helping with COVID-19 response, including the Manchester Food Cupboard and the VNA of the Southwestern region. It's associated with the Main Street Business Relief Program. And one of the other grants that was awarded through this COVID-19 response fund at the Vermont Community Foundation is $350,000 to make these 7 short-term career training programs, the ones we consider best bets, more affordable and accessible for Vermonters in 2021. There are something like 200 plus $1,000 scholarships or enrollment incentives available to Vermonters who want to enroll in these programs at CCV or Vermont Tech this year. Some of those programs have multiple starting dates, including in the summer, and others start in the fall.
I wanted to ask you also about the role of trade schools and tech schools and vocational education. Traditionally, I guess, the 4-year traditional college or a 2-year college program was sort of seemed to be held out as kind of the way to go for most high school graduates. But particularly as I look at your list of your promising Vermont careers, I see a lot of trades work, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, and that sort of thing. And of course, we've all heard no end of anecdotal stories about how hard it is to try and find a plumber in Vermont or an electrician. They're probably all in Texas right now, I would imagine. But anyway, I guess I just wondered, do you think there needs to be, I don't know if the word stigma is correct, the right one to use, but in the past, and certainly way back in the distant dark ages when I was in high school, tech and vocational trades courses were considered to be sort of, not quite the same as, let's say, a pre-college track. Is that changing? Are we finally at the verge now where we're seeing that, not only do these trades folks make very nice salaries, up to 6 figures easily, but that this is important work and it's useful work, and, hey, if this is something you're interested in, why not pursue that as opposed to a four-year college that might have you arrive with a diploma and a lot of college loan debt?
I hope so, Andrew, and I think so. We've also learned differently or more deeply that some of those trades, occupations, and career pathways are pandemic proof in a way that others aren't. So there's some stability baked into those fields that we might not see in, say, the hospitality or food service sectors right now. I would love to think differently about how we support career awareness, career exploration, career skill building before young people in Vermont reach graduation day from high school. And career and technical education is a big part of that, as is raising visibility and awareness of the trades as not only viable career pathways, but really exciting ones that offer hands-on work, in many cases the ability to work for yourself and be a small business owner, really great wages, and an exciting day-to-day experience. I think registered apprenticeships are one of the best kept secrets in Vermont. The ability to earn as you learn, working in the field, under kind of a mentor with more experience, taking courses 1 or 2 days in the evening, hitting milestones along the way that allow you to earn more and more wages, and knowing that after completion of that registered apprenticeship, you will be a hot commodity, that there are so many employers looking to hire electricians, plumbers, folks with HVAC certification. So yes, I think there are so many ways to think differently about how we support career exploration and career awareness before high school graduation. And there are some others as well, with the passage of the Flexible Pathways Bill in 2013, Vermont also codified things like dual enrollment and early college that allow a young person to access college courses for free before they graduate. And it also made it easier to access work-based learning programs. So when I take a step back, I reflect on how Vermont has one of the highest high school graduation rates in the country. And we also have to recognize that we have one of the lowest post-secondary continuation rates in New England, and that has an impact on Vermont families and communities. And it's not hard for me to connect that with the fact that Vermont has the highest poverty rate among young adults in New England. And employers are having a really hard time finding qualified workers, especially in the occupations that you just mentioned. I think the pandemic risks accelerating some of those inequities, including the 20% differential in the continuation rate of students from low-income backgrounds as compared to their economically advantaged peers. And so I think the pandemic's impact on education and training offers an opportunity to think differently about how those systems are accessed, supported, structured, funded, who they benefit. And that's why when the scope of the pandemic became clear, or at least clearer in late spring, including signs of mass deferments in post-secondary continuation among those seniors approaching high school graduation, we took a step back as a foundation and asked ourselves a question. In this time of uncertainty, what could we do as a foundation to offer graduating seniors an easy opportunity for continuing their education? And then behind the scenes, how could we support a relational handoff from high school-based counselors to college-based academic advisors and career advisors who could help those students chart next steps? We landed on a graduation gift to the entire Vermont high school class of 2020 of one free course of their choosing at the Community College of Vermont last fall. Our gift covered tuition and all fees associated with any course a student chose to take, including courses that are part of shorter term certificate programs. You could look at it like a mini universal college access initiative. And quite frankly, we were floored by the public response.
Yeah, I'm sure that was something that was very attractive to a number of of younger students. Boy, that would have gotten my attention, I guarantee you, back then. I wanted to ask if you were seeing any trend also around another issue. It's been kind of intriguing. That's the whole rural-urban kind of divide. Are a lot of job opportunities, do you think, it seems like every time I read about this, it's always a lot of the jobs and economic activity in Vermont is centered around Burlington and Chittenden County. Is there any reason to suspect that some of that may spread outwards to some of the other parts of the state, to smaller towns and less populated places, or is it just a case where, Burlington and that area is still going to be probably the place where most of these jobs are created?
Well, I think when we look at a macro scale in terms of numbers, the greater Chittenden County is and will continue to be a hub, but that doesn't mean there aren't reasons to be hopeful about workforce and economies in rural areas. I think remote work is more possible during the pandemic. And yes, we're seeing a lot of workforce disruption because of the pandemic that's causing pain and might disproportionately hit rural communities, especially those rural communities whose economies are oriented around tourism and hospitality. We're trying to stay positive because I think there are some things to be positive about. Number one, we're seeing incredible engagement from employers in these regions who are banding together and investing in a pipeline of skilled workers in ways that I think reflect a real doubling down in commitment to place and to rural economies. And at a time when so many Vermonters are out of work or looking for new work, we are still trying to share some hopeful messages. Three. Number one, that great jobs are available and continue to be available across the whole state and across a variety of career fields. Number two, that short-term career training programs really can help people access many of those jobs. Many of them are a year or shorter and can accommodate working Vermonters who also have family responsibilities and can't take on a lot of debt and attend school full time. And number three, that philanthropy is helping to make some of the career training programs it considers best bets for landing a promising job even more affordable in 2021. So there are some things to be hopeful about.
And I'm assuming a lot of these programs at this point are probably available remotely, right? Or online. You don't have to drive 25 or 30 miles to a college or a school or someplace to access them anymore, like you did in the dark ages a year ago.
Exactly. And I think, CCV is a great example of an institution that made a call relatively early for fall semester 2020. We're going online. Almost everything will be online except for the very few classes that for which success really is on in-person instruction. And CCV was able to do that in part because they have a 25-year track record of online learning and so many classes that were offered online that it wasn't a big stretch for them not only to shift all of their courses online, but to make sure that all of their student support services for students who are in degree programs, but also career training and certificate programs, make sure that all of those support services were available digitally as well. So I think about the 600 students from the Vermont class of 2020 who took their free course at CCV last fall. 90% of the 1,200 courses they took were completed. 80% of the students we surveyed said they met with virtually their advisor over the course of that semester. And most of those meetings involved meaningful conversations about developing a plan for what comes next in terms of education or career development. And so, we're hearing anecdotally and through this survey data that the online experience was a valuable one, that students were able to access support services in addition to their courses, and that experience, be it what they learned in the course or conversations with an advisor, was really clarifying in terms of finding the next step that is right for them. Maybe it's continuing at CCV, maybe it's transferring to another institution, maybe it's help crafting a resume and finding a job.
The state colleges have been in the news a fair amount because of some of their financial struggles that they've been going through. I mean, how important is it? Do you feel that the state comes up with enough money to keep those colleges kind of thriving as and being not just surviving? I mean, I think the governor has proposed about $20 million to put into their budgets to help them out, but it sounds like that there's a bigger hole than that needs to be filled. Are you talking with some of the state legislators, for instance, to say, hey, this is really important and a priority and it must happen?
We do believe it's important. As I said, we believe college and career training is the closest thing we have as a state to a silver bullet in advancing economic mobility. And if we start with the question of who do we intend to benefit with those investments? And our answer is the Vermonters who have the most to gain from a college degree or a career training program, many of whom are first-generation college going, come from low-income backgrounds. Then I think we need to center investments in the institutions where the students who are least likely to continue are most likely to go. And those are our public colleges. CCV has been our cornerstone partner for the past 10 years. They're our state's access institution, right? It's so easy to become a CCV student. It's easy to transfer CCV credits. Our hope is that the strength of CCV's business model and its responsiveness as an institution can be celebrated and built on in this session, and the legislative sessions start to follow. And we recognize that it's an underinvestment over the course of a generation by the state in the public colleges that has led us to this point and has resulted in college tuitions that are higher than almost any other public colleges and community colleges in the country. And of course that's going to have an impact on continuation, right? And on enrollment. So this pandemic has given us an interesting window into how the public's perception of cost influences enrollment. It's also, I think, underscored for us the value of strong, vital public college and career training institutions that can serve a wide variety of Vermonters, can be responsive to the workforce needs and to student needs, and can really be oriented to serve today's student. Perhaps not the 18 to 22-year-old as the default, but the working Vermonter who might have family obligations and can't attend full-time. Now, I don't think as a foundation we would consider ourselves preservationists. I think it's clear that the degree of the structural deficit the VSC is looking at will require some big changes and some hard changes, and might require us letting go as a state of some of the things that we held dear. But our hope is that whatever phoenix arises from this point forward really transforms affordability and access for Vermonters.
And there's so much more we could talk about with this. Artificial intelligence is another aspect to this. It strikes me as something that could be really a gigantic game changer, but unfortunately we're going to have to leave it there for today. But I wanted to thank you for making the time for talking with us, and for hopefully spreading the word about the work of your foundation. And you can be found online at McClureFoundation.org. Is that it?
McClureVT.org.
There we go. So folks can go there and check it out and get a wealth of resources about, particularly for some of the young folks who are wondering, okay, now what? But anyway, Carolyn, thanks again for your time, and we'll definitely want to stay in touch and learn more as we go along and emerge out of this quote-unquote interesting period in history.
Thank you so much for having me on, Andrew. I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you. And to all of you viewers, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed our program, and we'll see you again the next time. Once again, thanks to Carolyn Weir, the Executive Director of the J. Warren and Lois McClure Foundation. Have a great day, everyone.